Philanthropist James Burke knows trauma's tragedy and treatment. He's lived it.
I had lots of trauma. My mother, unfortunately, was bipolar, and so there was a lot of trauma in my household. And so it was unpredictable. You never knew exactly where you stood. You never felt like you could relax and be calm. And that was very stressful and was a difficult part of my life. And I was lucky that I had other supports around me to mitigate the effects of that.
James Burke seems to exemplify the resilience that the nation's pioneering pediatrician on ACEs, Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, talks about for Newark, for New Jersey, and for America. James Burke and other funders pledged $2 million to the cause and invited the doctor, whose TEDMed talk has more than 4 million views, to share her research and recommendations at this Princeton reception.
Imagine you're walking in the forest and you see my friend here.
Dr. Burke Harris tells how our bodies and brains adapt for life-saving fight or flight, and then asks, what if that bear came home every night?
And children are especially sensitive to this repeated activation of the stress response because their brains and bodies are just developing. So high doses of adversity in childhood literally affects the developmental trajectory of children's brains, their immune systems, their hormonal systems, and even the way their DNA is read and transcribed.
Dr. Burke Harris uses that message and this new ad of a boy witnessing alcoholism and abuse in her national campaign to get more pediatricians to screen for and detect adverse childhood experiences. As of a couple years ago, few were familiar with the research and even fewer were screening.
That is the reason why we created the National Pediatric Practice Community on ACEs, to be able to empower first-line providers with the research, the information, and a community of practitioners who are committed to changing the trajectory for the next generation.
The campaign has 6 New Jersey enrollees. It says nationwide it's exceeding projections with 773 members, 1/3 non-medical providers, because they understand the science and what's at stake.
What I see is that people are excited to be part of the solution.
But first, learning what happened to you through screening tools. 4 yes answers on the original ACEs questionnaire about exposure to abuse, violence, household dysfunction, and more is considered serious. The higher the score, the greater the risk of risky behavior and chronic diseases leading to a shortened lifespan. Dr. Burke Harris's San Francisco-based Center for Youth Wellness and its partners have launched ACEs screening programs across the country. The SPACES program in New Jersey screened more than 900 parents and children last year. The average score, almost 2.1. A third of the 129 self-reporting teens had scores of 4 to 9. There were about 200 referrals, 33% for child counseling, 24% for child-adolescent mental or behavioral health care, 21% parent counseling, 17.6% parenting classes, and 5% parenting support groups.
Ultimately, that's been the biggest thing that we've seen is it's opening the lines of communication. It's getting the pediatrician more comfortable in having those sometimes challenging conversations with families. And it's bringing all of those issues kind of out in the open.
If there's one thing that is incontrovertible, it is that early detection and early intervention improve outcomes, and safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and environments are healing for kids.
One principal says yoga at Sussex Avenue School in Newark has helped students focus and build peace in their hearts. Dr. Burke Harris also recommends better nutrition and sleep, therapy, and exercise and play. Layla Little leading the warm-up for Double Dutch. She founded Jump Kids Health, a spinoff of her Lifetime show, Jump, to address ACEs in Newark, the Bronx, and Philadelphia. She, too, knows childhood adversity when her brother went to prison.
I felt like to have my protector, he's going at.
Even worse, her parents' devastating divorce and dad leaving.
That's one of the ones that's tragic.
Little says her supportive older brothers and her working college student mother kept her busy and active. One place, the Boys and Girls Club of Newark, where she learned Double Dutch, and the coach became a mentor. Little considers it a blueprint to prevent the impact of ACEs.
My job is to capture it and as early as possible and intervene so that we be that component to put them on the right track.
That includes overcoming stigmas and the introduction of mental health help.
So I use Double Dutch to make it easier, to make it comfortable, to open them up to their mental health therapy sessions without knowing that they're actually getting mental health therapy. Keep jumping, but turn to me. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Kids play, proper nutrition, and counseling are all part of the treatment regimen after medical and health evaluations for these students at Link Community Charter School, where Jump Kids Health volunteer and therapist Tiffany Walker is an alum.
If you've witnessed a domestic violence situation in the home.
Walker demonstrates an orientation and how she screens for ACEs through rapport-building conversations. She knows the challenges of growing up here, sharing the same neighborhood with substance use treatment centers and halfway houses, a neighborhood with an unemployment rate nearly 4 times the national average and a poverty rate that tops 40%. In her toolkit for such an underserved area, challenging conventional approaches.
There are some individuals who they go through really hard things, and the first place they go to is church. They're not taught that it's okay to talk to anybody. It's like, oh, let's just pray about it.
And for the youth aware of deadly police stops or how stops can go sideways,
that deserves to be explored. Young people deserve an opportunity to talk about that honestly, to talk about those fears honestly, to talk about how to cope with that anxiety in the seasons that we live in now. And then they deserve to be given the skills.
They shot the person running.
Equal Justice USA trains police, teachers, and other professionals how to recognize trauma, including their own, and how to deal with it.
You see literally aha moments in people's faces, in their voices, in their eyes.
I see it all the time. It moves me to tears.
That's part of Newark trying to become a trauma-informed city by 2020.
My mother used to say that Superman is not real and neither is kryptonite, but she would say that in the sense that, like, all of the stuff you're going through, because you got through it doesn't mean you're Superman. You got through it, but ultimately there's some things that happen because you encountered these situations and you have to address them.
One piece of that 2020 goal, the Shani Baraka Women's Resource Center in the South Ward, where advocates say women have been coming in record numbers to report and recover from sexual assaults and domestic violence, current crimes, and ones from months and years ago. The center bears the name of the mayor's sister, gunned down in a case of domestic violence. 16 years later,
it traumatized my entire family, and we're still traumatized from that.
Americans spend billions of dollars every year to treat the impact of trauma, from violence, disease, poverty, substance use disorder, and more. A ton of money, while some advocates weigh what an ounce of prevention can do. That's in our next report. In Newark, Michael Hill, NJTV News.